My fellow citizens, I want to talk to you about our economy. It is important that you understand the reasons for the policy measures I've taken to combat the serious economic challenges this nation had long faced. I'm not going to talk in difficult terms by dwelling on economic jargon and concepts. I will speak in plain, clear language so that you know where I stand. More importantly, so that you see and hopefully will share my vision regarding the journey to a better, more productive economy for our beloved country. For several years, I have consistently maintained the position that the fuel subsidy had to go. This once beneficial measure had outlived its usefulness. The subsidy cost us trillions of naira yearly, such as a vast sum of money would have been better spent on public transportation, health care, school, housing, and even national security. Instead, it was being funneled into the deep pocket and lavish bank account of a selected group of individuals. This group had amassed so much wealth and power that they became a serious threat to the fairness of our economy and the integrity of our democratic governance. To be blunt, Nigeria could never become the society it was intended to be as long as such small, powerful, yet unelected groups hold enormous influence over our political economy and the institutions that govern it. The whims of the few should never hold dominant sway over the hopes and aspirations of the many. If we are to be a democracy, the people and not the power of money must be sovereign. The preceding administration saw this looming danger as well. Indeed, it made no provision in the 2023 appropriation for subsidy after June this year. Removal of this once helpful device that had transformed into a millstone around the country's neck had become inevitable. Also, the multiple exchange rate, the system that had been established became nothing but a highway of currency speculation. It diverted money that should have been used to create jobs, build factories, and businesses for millions of people. Our national wealth was doled out on favorable terms to a handful of people who had been made filthy rich simply by moving money from one hand to another. This too was extremely unfair and is not acceptable. It's also compounded the threat that the illicit and mass accumulation of money posed to the future of our democratic system and its economy. I had promised to reform the economy for the long-term good by fighting major imbalances that has plagued our economy. Ending the subsidy and the preferential exchange rate system were key to this fight. This fight is to define the fate and future of our nation. Much is imbalanced. Thus, the effect in our economy immensely profited a tiny elite, the elite of the elite, you might call them. As we move to fight the flaws in the economy, the people who grow rich from them predictably will fight back through every means necessary. But we are ready. Our economy is going through a tough patch, and you are being hurt by it, I know. The cost of fuel has gone up. Food and other prices have followed it. Households and businesses struggling. Things seem anxious and uncertain. I understand the hardship you face. I wish there were other ways, but there is not. If there were, I would have taken that route, as I came here to help, not to hurt the people and the nation that I love so dearly. What I can offer in the immediate is to reduce the burden of current economic situation, which has imposed on all of us, most especially on businesses, the working class, and most vulnerable among us. Already, the federal government is working closely with states and local governments to implement interventions that will cushion the pains of our people across socio-economic brackets. Earlier this month, I signed 4 executive orders in keeping with my electoral promise to address unfriendly fiscal policies and multiple taxes that are stifling the business environment. These executive orders on suspension and deferred commencement of some taxes will provide the necessary buffers and headroom to businesses in manufacturing sector to continue to thrive and expand. To strengthen the manufacturing sector, increase its capacity to expand and create good paying jobs, we are going to spend $75 billion between July 2023 and March 2024. Our objective is to fund minimum of 75 enterprises with great potential to kickstart a sustainable economic growth, accelerated structural transformation, and improved productivity. Each of these 75 manufacturing enterprises will be able to access 1 billion credit at a maximum of 9% per annum, with maximum of 60 months repayment for long-term loans and 12 months for working capital. Our administration recognizes the importance of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises and the informal sector as the drivers of growth. We are going to energize this important sector with $125 billion. Out of the sum, we will spend $50 billion conditional grant to 1 million nano businesses between now and March 24. Our target is to give a minimum of 50,000 each to 1,300 nano businesses owners in each of the 774 local governments across the country. Ultimately, this program will further drive financial inclusion by onboarding beneficiaries into the formal banking system. In like manner, we will fund 100,000 MSMEs and startups with $75 billion. Under this scheme, each enterprise promoter will be able to get between 500,000 and 1 million at the maximum 9% interest per annum and repayment period of 36 months. To further ensure that food prices and the items remain affordable, we have had a multi-stakeholder engagement with various farmers and associations and the operators within the agricultural value chain. In short and in immediate terms, we will ensure stable food are available and affordable. To this end, I have ordered release of 200,000 metric tons of grains from strategic reserves to households across the 36 states and FCT. To moderate prices, we are also providing 225,000 metric tons of fertilizer, seeding, and other inputs to farmers who are committed to our food security agenda. Our plan to support cultivation of 500,000 hectares of farmland and all year-round farming practice remain on course. To be specific, 200 billion out of the 500 billion approved by the National Assembly will be disbursed as follows. Our administration will invest 50 billion each to cultivate 150,000 hectares of rice and maize. 50 billion each will also be earmarked to cultivate 100,000 hectares of wheat and cassava. This expansive agricultural program will be implemented targeting small farm holders and leveraging large-scale private sector players in the agri-business with strong performance record. In this regard, the expertise of developed financial institutions, commercial banks, and microfinance banks will be tapped to develop a viable and appropriate transaction structure for all stakeholders. Fellow Nigerians, I made a solemn pledge to work for you, how to improve your welfare and living conditions. It's of paramount importance to me, and it is the only thing that keeps me up day and night. It is in the light of this that I approved the infrastructure support for the states. This new infrastructure fund will enable states to intervene, to invest and reinvest in critical areas and bring relief to many of the pain points, as well as revamp our decaying healthcare and educational infrastructure. The fund will also bring improvement to rural access roads to ease the evacuation of farm produce to markets. With the fund, our state will become more competitive and on a stronger financial footing to deliver economic prosperity to Nigerians. Part of our program is to roll out buses across state and local government for mass transit at a much more affordable rate. We have made provision to invest 100 billion between now and March 2024 to acquire minimum of 3,000 units of 20-seater CNG fuel buses. These buses will be shared to major transportation companies in the state using the intensity of travel per capita. Participating transport companies will be able to access credit under the facility at a maximum per annum 9% interest rate with 60 months repayment period. And then, in the same vein, we are also working in a collaboration with the labor unions to introduce a new national minimum wage for workers. I want to tell you, our workers, that this, your salary review is coming. Once we agree on the minimum wage and general upward review, we will make budget provision for it for immediate implementation. I want to use this opportunity to salute many private employers in the organized private sector who have already implemented general salary review for employees. Fellow Nigerians, this period may be hard on us, and there is no doubt that it's tough on us. But I urge you all to look beyond the present temporary pains and aim at the larger picture. All our good and helpful plans are in the works. More importantly, I know that they will work. Sadly, there was an unavoidable lag between subsidy removal and these plans coming fully online. However, we are swiftly closing the time gap. I plead with you, please have faith in our ability to deliver and in our concern for your well-being. We will get out of this turbulence, and due to the measures we have taken, Nigeria will be better equipped and able to take advantage of the future that awaits her. And in a little over 2 months, we have saved over 1 trillion naira that would have been squandered on the unproductive fuel subsidy, which only benefited smugglers and fraudsters. That money will now be used more directly and more beneficially for you and your families. For example, we shall fulfill our promise to make education more affordable to all and provide loans to higher education students who may need them. No Nigerian student will have to abandon higher education because of lack of money. Our commitment is to promote the greatest good for the greatest number of our people. On principle, we shall never falter. We are also monitoring the effect of exchange rate and inflation on gasoline prices. If and when necessary, we will intervene. I assure you, my fellow countrymen and women, that we are exiting the darkness to enter a new and glorious dawn. Now, I must get back to work in order to make this vision come true. Thank you all for listening, and may God bless Federal Republic of Nigeria.
President Bola Tinubu's address there in his broadcast message to Nigerians. According to the president, the federal government has saved over 1 trillion naira in the past 2 months following the removal of petrol subsidy. Now, he says some of the savings will be used as low-interest loans for businesses, including small, medium, as well as micro-enterprises. The president also says the government plans to spend 100 billion naira to acquire 3,000 units of 20-seater CNG buses. CNG, that's the compressed natural gas buses, to buses that use CNG to be distributed to transporters across Nigeria at an interest rate not more than 9%. Now, for analysis of the president's address to Nigerians, I'm joined live in the studio by Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, who's the Deputy Dean of the Postgraduate School at Bayes University in Abuja. Also, the journalist and political affairs commentator and Arise News analyst, Dr. Constance Ikokwu, is here. This is something that many Nigerians waited for. But again, let's start by asking you, Professor Adeniyi, you've heard the president. For some people, they feel that this is perhaps coming at the right time, while some others think that it's rather late in coming because it amounts to putting the cart before the horse in trying to do some of the things that he should have done just before the removal of subsidy. But again, so the conversations are out there. Let us in on what your thoughts are when you watched the president earlier.
Yeah. First of all, I think I'm impressed that he chose to talk to us at all. Against the background of where we're coming from. The recent president we had, we often had difficulty convincing him to talk to us when the need arose. I remember in the wake of the outbreak of COVID-19, it was a struggle to get him to address the nation. And in one other incident, of course, it took him time for him to respond. But in this instance, I can't remember any serious agitation out there asking President Tinubu to come and address the nation on account of the rising costs of living, troubling our country in the wake of his own economic surgeries, the liberalization of the economy, removal of subsidy, the floating of the naira, which has corrected prices of goods and services. So that he came out to talk at all, I think it's appreciable. This is not to say that it's not is an obligation on his part. It is an obligation, but just that because of our recent experiences, it has become something that tend to gratify us when we see presidential addresses like this. That is one. And of course, going through the speech, I also saw some emotional connection, some sentimental connection. He was laboring quite hard to connect with the people, to show that he feels their pain, and of course, trying to be humane, to show that, yes, he's not above the suffering. He still feels the pulse of the people. And he's outlining measures, to mitigate their pains. The measures are quite elaborate, no doubt, beginning from the top and targeting all those sectors, that can possibly reflect the economy, boost, create some multipliers here and there, get a lot of people involved, particularly those at the middle and at the lower rung of the economic ladder, get them involved. And these are sections that often have a way of stimulating economic activities in the system, small and medium scale businesses, agri sector, billions of naira have been outlined as monies that will go to them, as the case could be, if everything were to go smoothly. But again, it is cascading down the line. But Suleiman, my greatest worry is not about these figures, this big amount of money. The worry is about implementation. Now we're going to have some of these monies, maybe when the ministers come up, of course, it will be allocated between the ministries, maybe not. Ministry of Agri, National Planning, as the case could be, then of course they will take charge. But at the end of the day, you will find that the processes will get hijacked, such that beneficiaries will now become people who know somebody, or people who know somebody that knows somebody. People who are supposed to implement it will now take advantage of it and see it as their own opportunity, to benefit from the national cake. All these things will now become appropriated by individuals. And there are so many ways in which Nigerians can systematically perfect the process of circumventing the good intention of the presidential broadcast, as the case could be. Then you now find that implementation will now become a problem. Then we'll begin to complain again. It will never go anywhere. Ordinarily on paper, he looks very reasonable, enabling the resources or the savings from removal of fuel subsidy to trickle down. If it trickles down the way it's been outlined, of course we're going to have a reflection of the economy and the improvement in the economy, no doubt. And of course, maybe some level of mitigation. Yes, it is programmed to last for like 1 year, but maybe in another 3 or 4 months, if the implementation commences effectively, we can begin to see the result. And do not forget that the argument has been made. All the pain we're going to face is going to be in the short term, but in the longer term, we're going to be seeing some progress. So it's very important for us to be concerned about implementation as well, and not to allow it to be hijacked, by those who want to further the culture of patrimony. So that
I think we still have time. I'll come back so that we can actually space it and stretch that, Professor Adeniyi. Thank you. Quickly here, Dr. Ikokwu, we're talking about first on the face value, listening to the president for I think that was a speech that is about 20 minutes. So tell us your thoughts, your initial thoughts, listening to the president a while ago.
The first thing to say is that it was required of him to speak to Nigerians. Why do I say so? It is a time of crisis and uncertainty. And it is a big deal to have a president speak directly to the nation in a country like Nigeria. So his handlers did well by advising him to take the step and talk directly to the people that he's supposed to serve, and share with them his views and his vision for our country. The second thing to say is that the speech obviously was loaded. It was about 41 paragraphs, and he spent about 8 paragraphs alone talking about the fuel subsidy removal, trying to explain what happened and what is going on. He did that because of the tremendous negative impact and unseen consequences of the fuel subsidy removal on the economy. I'm sure that so many people didn't see the cascading effect that this will have on various sectors and areas of the country. You go around in the streets, a lot of people no longer move around as freely as they used to because of the cost of fuel. and then it's also impacted the cost of food and all of that. So he did a good job to speak, and there are a couple of features and elements to this speech. He touched a lot on his policy priorities, which I'm sure people were looking forward to hear from him. So on this, there was infrastructure, there was SMEs, there was food security and all of that. There was also a sort of accountability, because in this case, you want to see a president that acknowledges his shortcomings. So for instance, I go to the paragraph where he talks about, sadly, there was an unavoidable lag between subsidy removal and these plans coming fully online. However, we are swiftly closing the gap. That is huge. So he is recognizing, acknowledging that initially when it was removed, the plans weren't properly put together. But now they sort of got themselves together and they are trying to remedy what has gone wrong and correct it. So that's a good way to start. There was also some sort of reassurance in times like this. Of course, I said uncertainty. You want to hear your president speak and reassure you that it's going to be well. So he says something in the lines of, we will get out of this turbulence, and due to the measures we have taken, Nigeria will be better equipped and able to take advantage of the future that awaits her. There's a lot of other things in the speech, I can expatiate further, but let me stop here for now.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Constance Ikokwu. Quickly here, Professor Adeniyi, as Constance said, looking at his speech and paragraph for paragraph, he took time out to itemize some of the key concerns of Nigerians. And again, in paragraph 11, he says that, well, things seem anxious and uncertain, and he was categorical when he said, I understand the hardship you face. I wish there were other ways, but there is not. Some had thought that this speech was going to also bear the signs or the message of reversal of the subsidy removal on petrol, but he says, I would have taken that route as I came here to help, not to hurt the people and nation that I love. So there is no alternative to that than to soldier on, he says. Now, speak to us about some of the other key things he's highlighted that may help mitigate the effect of that removal.
Okay, but first, I think it's also important for us to talk about the light side of the speech, maybe the literary aspect of the speech. I think the speech is not bad in terms of literary flow, in terms of prose, in terms of the injection of, some terms, alliteration, for instance, and of course, we saw the president trying to render it as eloquently as possible, because there's a sense in saying that there's a sense in saying that there are ways in which such flow help the conveyance of messages, and of course we saw all those things playing out. If you look at paragraph 10, for instance, it was particularly loaded with this alliteration, and also there was another paragraph that came in the 30s, also loaded with this alliteration, and he tried his best to connect to a level of emotions and sentiment, like I said. So being the first major speech after his inauguration, it's a welcome development. Hopes are high that he will continue from this pedestal, he will build on this momentum and address us anytime there is concern in the system, as the case could be. But again, let me come back to you.
I hope we don't lose your train of thought.
No, I'm coming back to your question.
Yes, because I'll come for you to address the question, and I'll also come back to you so that we can also talk more about the speech in effect. We'll take a moment. We'll come back. You're watching Arise Prime Time. Stay with us. Welcome back to Arise Prime Time, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day with me, Sulaiman Led. And today we're looking at the president's speech. My guests are still very much here. Professor Adeniyi, Deputy Dean of the Postgraduate School at Bayes University in Abuja, and also journalist, political affairs commentator, Arise News analyst, Dr. Constance Ikokwu. I would like to start with you so that you can land on your train of thoughts, Professor Adeniyi. You were talking about the light side of the speech and some other issues that you wanted us to look at.
It was a well-written speech, very interesting. It flowed well, good prose, full of alliteration, and he didn't do badly rendering it, you know, because that can be very, very difficult if you are not a literary person. And before now, it's not been established to be somebody who's with a fantastic locution or with an excellent rhetorical prowess. But of course, we have also lowered the bar, you know, for him. And coming into presidency, he has done very well in the last 2 months, communicating at on international platforms. And of course, we can see him improving by the day. So kudos to him on that ground. But back to the economic question that you raised, you know. One, we can look at it from two sides, from the macro and the micro aspect. In the macro aspect, of course, what we're seeing is an attempt by the president, you know, to reflate the economy, to pump money into the system. The money is coming from subsidy. And if that happens, of course, you know that the system will benefit from it ordinarily. And in doing that, not just sheer pumping of money, but making sure that it's concentrated at those at the middle and the lower rung, you know. A number of people in all the 774 local governments of this country will benefit, and coming up from there, small and medium scale businesses will also benefit. So these things are very systematic. But of course, we also know that the economic decisions, you know, they are dependent, they are filled with variables that are also dependent on other things working. If all other things are not working, of course, there will not be result. And what are these other things, you know? We're talking about the manpower that will implement it, you know, the timing of the release, you know, and of course, if at all, there's going to be transparency and accountability in the process. If at all, cronyism, nepotism will not once more come in. And this is actually my greatest fear, you know, and oftentimes we see some of these fantastic policies, they just stop on paper. You know, we do not see result at the end of the day. We just hope this will not go that route once more. And it's very important for us to continue to emphasize this so that the president can be guided. We have an advisor on policy coordination, policy formulation, as the case could be. If one of the responsibility of that office is monitoring and evaluation, then their job is cut out for them with respect to this one. But over importantly, we have money saved from subsidy returning to the system, not necessarily into private pockets like we have said. And of course, finally, Sulaiman, if these monies again are cornered, you know, by hijackers, cornered by power brokers, what it means is that it will not go into the system. It will just go to the vault of these individuals who will not even bank the money in the first instance because they will not want to be apprehended. And when it's not banked, it loses economic. It is of no economic value. It is not going to contribute to the reflation of the system which we desire. Which is why, you know, transparency, accountability, judicious use of the resources, appropriate delivery of the plan, it becomes very, very important.
Let me start off from one of the key areas you mentioned, and that has to do with the 774 local governments, because it will seem as if the president is also trying to see how effective the grassroots governance will be here, because in paragraph 13, he says the federal government is working closely with states and local governments to implement interventions that will cushion the pains of people across socio-economic brackets. How much of optimism do you share in terms of grassroots governance being a key player in ensuring that the people's pains are actually assuaged?
Well, we have 3 levels of government, right? The federal, the state, and the local government. There have been a lot of conversations about the local government, especially being strangled by the state governments in terms of financial allocations and all whatnot. During President Muhammad Buhari's administration, there were many attempts to make sure that those 2 tiers of government are sort of separated so that each one gets the allocation and then it can reach the people that it's supposed to serve, right? A lot of talk on this policy and priorities that he has outlined. You know, people of course want to hear, you know, clear outline of his efforts in this area, and he has done that. You know, talking about transportation, he's talking about the food security, in which he talked about releasing grains and giving money to farmers, and then giving money to transport companies, and all of that in every level of the country. The thing though is execution. This is a very big country. It's a big country that is not known to do well in terms of governance, that is not known to do well in terms of transparency at all levels. So it's going to take a lot. It will be very tasking. Hopefully they get it right, but it will be very tasking to be able to execute these policies properly, adequately, transparently, and you know that whatever money that has been allocated for something gets done, you know, for the purposes that it was allocated for. So we will be watching, you know, Nigerians will be watching to see how this pan out over the next couple of months. I want to add the fact that there was some sort of empathy shown in this speech, which is necessary because people want to see a president that understands their struggles in a time like this. So he says something like, this period may be hard on us. There is no doubt about that. That is tough on us, but I urge you to look beyond the present temporary pains and aim at the larger picture. He's asking us to look at the larger picture, which is obviously a Nigeria that he thinks he's going to guide us to, so that we come out on the other end and have a thriving and a vibrant economy. It's going to still take a lot to do that. So I think people will begin to give the president a benefit of doubt. You have said that you would do this. You have outlined this vision. Okay, we are waiting to see how this goes in the next couple of months. Normally in times like this also, there is the expectation that the president will be inspirational and motivational. I don't know if I saw that coming through in this speech in terms of especially delivery. Yes, he connected with people on a couple of areas. For instance, he talked about having discussions with labor on increasing the minimum wage, which is a very, very sensitive issue. Most people's salaries have been completely wiped out because of the subsidy removal, that you can't even pay transport. There are some states that are talking about 3-day work a week, 4-day work a week, because you're unable to foot the bill to go to work. You know, so I think there's a lot here. He doesn't exactly inspire. However, he's telling us to give him a chance. Basically, that's what this speech is about. Give me a chance to work for you. Cut me some slack. It is a difficult situation. I will try my best to see if we can get out of it. So I think people are watching to see. There is also a lot of clarity. People also want to see and understand the president when he speaks, and you know, without any ambiguity. We see it in this speech. There are no ambiguities. You know, his language is clear. He's talking to us directly. He's saying it in black and white what he's going to do and what he is not going to do. So it makes it easy to actually hold him accountable. It makes it easy to come back tomorrow and say, hey, Mr. President, you told us A, B, and C. We haven't seen C, we have seen A. What about this? You know, so it's a process that is also good for us in the country to continue to have this sort of interface between the president and the citizens. So,
Professor, okay, yeah. Sorry, I thought you landed on that. Apologies, button in there. Professor Adeniyi started off by saying, well, now this is a departure from the norm, you know, which was a bad precedent, not speaking to the people. The good thing here is some of the key highlights both of you have raised. But is this speech enough for NLC to back down on a strike?
Well, that's a different issue, really. But of course, we saw the president trying to talk to them directly that is going to increase the wages of workers. And but he was not specific with respect to when it will be increased. But do not forget, NLC, the workers are also part of the system. If the volume of money that he promised to pump into the system is pumped, of course, one way or the other, it could rub off on the workers, maybe not, if not directly, but indirectly. What I see happening now is that for NLC to go back to the drawing board and look through things, you know, probably go into further consultation with the government, you know, and maybe get some clarity on when the implementation of the promised increase in wages will be. Because overall, what the government is trying to do is to mitigate the pains from the removal of fuel subsidy and, of course, the floating of the naira. Short-term measures, you know, there's hardly any focus on long-term measure, you know, to also reflate the economy. You know, I mean, diversify our economy away from the sole dependent on oil revenue, which is unfortunately is declining. We didn't see any policy roadmap, any pronouncement in this speech on steel development, on solid minerals, you know, maybe an expanded one on agriculture, maybe on tourism. All these ones are not really clear from his speech. But do not forget, I said it might just be measures to address the short-term pain. Maybe going forward, in another instance, he might furnish us with information on what the plans are for long-term objective with respect to broadening the scope of the economy with regards to revenue that is presently declining, and of course that is challenging our ability to float as a country. So NSE, you know, we still expect them to bite, sort of, but one cannot be too sure if they are going to go to the street. Remembering also that government has said that if they go to the street, it will be a violation of a subsisting court order, you know, that prevented them from downing tools the other day. Well, it's something that we're going to hear from them in another few hours, as the case could be. But what matters again is that it all should be about consultation. If they go to the street and at the end of the day, they are ending up at the table, is it not possible for them, for parties, stakeholders to be dialogic in the first instance and probably prevent resort to, what do you call it now, to resort to protestation? If there's anything that can be done before then of course trade action can be put on hold for now. You know, and like we said, largely, I think it's a conscious attempt on the part of the president to connect with the people, and he has done it. But how it's going to be received by the trade union is another ball game. That time will tell.
Well, Dr. Ikokwu, 200,000 metric tons of grains released, fertilizer released, you know, cultivated land, a whole lot, he said. But some people are already worried that the president hasn't said anything about the refineries in the country. Perhaps, what do you think about the short-term plans? Because if you look at some of all these he's highlighted, they don't seem to be like short-term measures. They're more like a long-term measure. But for Labour, the NLC specifically, they want to see some short-term plans.
Oh, sorry, this is looking like short-term because some of these things are supposed to come into fruition in another 1 year by March 2024. So in the meantime, does it not look like short-term?
Immediate. It doesn't look, Constance, help me here. It doesn't look like Nigerians are waiting for 1 year more.
Yeah, permit me to say, I think the most immediate way that they have thought about alleviating the suffering is the palliative. I don't know what else they have in mind. You know, they have been hammering on that from day one. And of course, we talked about how it is so short term. After 6 months, whatever money you give to people goes nowhere. You know, so there's a lot still to talk about in terms of, you know, where the government is going. Yes, there should be a short-term measure. There should be medium term. And then there should be long term. And when you talked about the grains, it took me back to, was it Adamawa State? Over the weekend when young people were protesting, of course, out of hopelessness and frustration. And then they began to loot warehouses, government warehouses and private warehouses of grains because, of course, they probably cannot afford it in these circumstances that we are passing through. So now he talks about grain, releasing grain, you know, supporting farmers to farm maize and cassava. There's something else. This is so important. Remember that we are literally facing food shortages across the country owing to the many years of the tussle and the conflict between the farmers, the herders, and the activities of terrorists all over the country. So it's been difficult for farmers to go to farm. So you have the whole middle belt villages where people have been wiped out, where people have been moved, and they can no longer go and carry out their primary job, which is farming. That's a problem, and that is very worrying for a country like Nigeria. We should be able to feed ourselves. So it is good that he's talking about this farming, you know, program that he has. Again, the question becomes, will it be like the CBN programs on farming the last time in the last administration. There was so much money that was budgeted, that was given to farmers. There were loans. A lot of those loans, they were unable to pay back. So again, it's management of the entire program that you have, the implementation of the program that you have, the people that are going to carry these programs out, are going to implement them. They have to be sincere. They have to be doing it in the best interest of the people, for the service of the country. That's basically what they're supposed to do. So who are the people that you're going to pick or get, the teams, the committees that are going to be able to execute this and make sure that it has the intended impact on the economy? So it's a lot that he has at hand. You talked about refineries. Well, everyone is talking about, are there alternative sources of energy rather than fuel? The refineries, yes, monies are being allocated still for turnaround maintenance, and they're still not working to capacity. I think the government slowly has turned its focus to Dangote refineries, a private concern, a private business, to rely more on that to power the country in terms of refining petroleum products. It's still a shame, though, that a country like Nigeria cannot refine its products. And this takes me back to fuel subsidy. A lot of people will argue that the problem with the fuel subsidy was not the fuel subsidy, but the corruption in it. When you import fuel, you don't even know how much, you cannot say exactly how much fuel you're importing. You cannot say exactly how many liters you're using in a day. So the whole thing is shrouded in secrecy. So you have people that are living fat on the country. And that is why the president took almost 8 paragraphs to explain why they had to take this action. But then it's not only a few elites that were benefiting from it. Fuel subsidy was also for the majority of Nigerians. Now we see that you have removed it. Now we've seen the impact and the consequences on everything, on transport especially. So maybe at some point, we may have to rethink it. In some countries, or in many countries around the world, if you're not subsidizing fuel, you're probably subsidizing education, you're subsidizing agriculture, you're subsidizing education, healthcare services. There has to be something for the people.
Right.
And we should think in that direction.
And it looks like there's already something for the people, because the president also says the program will involve rolling out mass transit buses, talking about the CNG fueled buses. And just before his speech, quickly, it's as if states have started doing that, because Lagos State already has announced a reduction to fares of state-owned buses by 50% to cushion the effect of the subsidy removal. Speak to us, if we can closer on that, on how that can, trickle down other states to help in mitigate the effect of the hike in transportation.
You see, government has a major role really in reviving the economic situation of the nation at any point in time. Because government is supposed to have the bigger resources, the bigger opportunity, or the bigger wherewithal, to intervene. And I'm seeing the savings from oil subsidy that the government is trying to pump back into the system as an intervention, as a way of intervening. If at the end of the day, I beg your pardon, the intervention is well managed, of course we should expect to see some result. And it's also gratifying, like you said, that even government at subnational level, Lagos is taking the initiative. Characteristically, though, most of the time it is typical of them. They take initiative in these things. It's good that they are doing it, and of course we also hope that maybe other states, if they are properly assisted, can also follow suit, so that we can see this thing cascading down. It was one of the philosophy that guided the decision of the National Economic Council the other day, that let's have these policies cascading down through the states and onto the local government. But unfortunately, like Constance said earlier, the local governments are practically non-existent. They've been obliterated, like I said yesterday. So we need that arm of government to be back, playing the role they're supposed to play, because they're closest to the people. They understand the feelings, the emotions, and sentiments of the people better. But let's also forget that, back to your question on refinery, efforts are on. If we are genuine, to revitalize them. Kaduna, Warri, and where Port Harcourt. Efforts are on with Port Harcourt in the main. So if the billions pumped into them, to revitalize them, to bring them back on stream, if it is delivered at the end of the day, if it's not wasted, of course, in the next couple of months or years, we should have some of these refineries back, complementing the Dangote refinery that is supposed to come on stream any moment from now. So the important thing is that the plans are on. Let's hope that execution will also be spick and span.
Well, it's a fine place for us to leave it here tonight. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, Dr. Constance Ikokwu, many thanks. And of course, Nigerians, you can also catch up on the President's full speech here on arise.tv. That's it from all of us here. Thanks for watching.